Hey, Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day. All Bills, all the time. And now Matt Beauvais and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
I think it goes without saying, Matt and I both love our jobs. I mean, we're two kids who grew up in Buffalo, who are covering Buffalo sports teams, who get to talk about them on radio and TV, respectively. But if we could be fired up for a podcast to talk about anything in sports on April 8th, I think we're as fired up as we could possibly be today, Matt Beauvais.
Oh, absolutely. One of our favorite podcasts every single year. We say that every single year that we do the interview. Admittedly, I'm a little bit nervous right now. Not because Mike is intimidating, but because I want to make sure we ask good questions. It's always our most listened to podcast, our most watched podcast. So we got to deliver.
And we're going to do that right now. Bring in Mike North. He is the vice president of broadcast planning for the National Football League. He's one of the head schedule makers for the league. We love talking to him every year. And Mike, we so appreciate your time that you give us every single year to do this podcast.
Hey, nothing going on right now, so I'm good to see you guys.
You too. You too. You've done it from a car when you were watching your kids during some sporting events. You've done it from, last year, you were in your kitchen. Where are you today? It looks like you got some golf pictures behind you,
I actually came to the office today. I'm in the building. We are T-minus 5 weeks probably. Schedule release. Yeah. Still that kind of second week in May has been our target really since the pandemic. So yeah, about 5 weeks to go. Just got back from the owners meeting in Palm Beach. Had a few interesting conversations down there with the teams, with our network partners. Time to lock and load and make sure we got a winner in about 5 weeks.
We'll start right there. Sal Capaccio, Matt Beauvais. It's always game day in Buffalo. Thanks a lot for watching, subscribing, listening. And we have Mike North with us. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, you kind of let us off with it, but I feel like it's the natural starting point. No official date announced just yet. I know that we can kind of read between the tea leaves, but does it still seem like second week of May? Usually you guys do it on a Thursday. You guys kind of tease some games on the network partners for the week leading up to it. Are we kind of on the same schedule this year?
Yeah. I think our target, look, one of the benefits of going a little bit later with schedule release is getting a chance to see what happens in the draft. And, what do any of us know? But I think we kind of have a feel for, the top couple of picks, but are there some trades going to happen? Still waiting on a certain future Hall of Fame quarterback to sign somewhere, maybe this year. So hopefully a lot of that is known by draft day. And then if anything happens in the draft, whether it's, chalk as scripted or anything surprising happens, still give ourselves, a week or so to react and adjust, and then kind of check in with our boss, the commissioner of the National Football League, whose vote is the only one that matters, and make sure he's comfortable kind of that end of that first week in May. Maybe give us one more weekend to tinker and search just a little bit longer for that supposed magical, mythical best grain of sand, if it's out there somewhere on this gigantic beach. And somewhere in the May 13, 14, 15 range is probably still our target.
All right, so that's when the public finds out. When do the teams know, Mike? Do you let them know? I think we've asked this before, and it's kind of been a little different answer maybe over the years.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, you guys have been doing this long enough to remember, like, schedule used to kind of come out almost stealth, like kind of one night it came out mid-April, and it was like, oh, schedule is out. Okay, got it. All right, now back to the draft, back to the prospects, back to all the mocks. The decision was made to give April really to, the kids and the prospects and the draft, and really make that the focus, and then slide schedule release into May, kind of create another eventized sort of moment for the fans and for the league. And so now all of April belongs to draft, and May really, post-draft, it's like, all right, now we know where they're playing. Now we got to wait and find out who they're playing. It also kind of syncs up pretty well with our network partners as they get into upfronts and stuff like that. It's good for them to have a game or two in their pocket. So it's, second week in May, kind of been there the last 5 or 6 years, and I assume that's where we'll be. No set date, because really you never know if by some miracle, we're done on May the 7th and we present one to the boss, and commissioner says, hey, this is perfect. I wouldn't change a thing, guys. We're done. Pencils down. If so, probably no reason to sit on it. Let's let it get out and let everybody, start making plans, booking flights, booking hotels, buying tickets, anthem singers, Frisbee dogs, whatever it is we have to do. But I suspect that second week in May, we'll take every moment he'll give us because you never know what you might find overnight.
What is he looking for when you guys give him the draft of, hey, here's what we think? What is usually the response if it's not quite ready yet? Is there a common theme of like, hey, we need you to tweak this?
It's really, at that point, if we've done our jobs right, I hope we're not blindsiding him. I hope we're not surprising him with anything. I hope we're not handing him a schedule that doesn't project to deliver maximum viewership or put any team in a, competitively unfair situation. Certainly shouldn't be, playing over any stadium blocks or doing anything like truly onerous. He's looking for, at that point, I think, sort of balance. He's looking for the right mix of the biggest games in the biggest windows, prime time, Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night. He's looking for the Sunday afternoon doubleheader slate. That's still our biggest window where you're getting 28, 29, 30 million people sometimes watching that doubleheader game. He's looking at the key tent poles, right? He's looking at Thanksgiving. He's looking at Christmas. He's looking at Black Friday. He's a little more gut and feel than we are. We try to be a little bit more math and science, but at the end of the day, some of this is really just we're all fans. Mm-hmm. And, as a fan, what am I missing? What's not there? Should there be another Buffalo game in a national television window? Are there enough good quality games in the Saturday TBD pool in week 17? Did we hit the right marks and check the right boxes for all of our different partners? Is everybody going to feel, if not happy, at least not too disappointed? We know not everybody's happy on release day, but nobody should be too disappointed in us and nobody should be too enthralled and too happy. We want everybody kind of just a little bit disappointed. I think that's what we're looking for.
Mike, before we look forward, let's look back. Let's go to last year's schedule. Just like anybody who creates something and takes pride in it, you're going to look back and say, this is what we did right. This is what we did wrong. This is where we could have done something a little bit different. However you want to phrase it for yourself. What do you think about the 2024 schedule and how you guys put it together? Where did you think you really got it right? Or are there a couple spots where maybe you thought you missed?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's sports, right?
Yep.
None of us know what's going to happen. Did any of us see Washington coming the way they did? Probably not. Did any of us see San Francisco kind of backsliding a little bit? Injuries have a way and you lose one or two close games. And, I'll give you a great example. You guys were there, that San Fran Buffalo game, that Sunday night of Thanksgiving weekend, in May, that felt like almost about as big as we could have gone that weekend. That's the end of a very long weekend of football between us and the colleges. And we play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like by the time you get to Sunday night, you need a winner. You need an A-level game. Thought we had one in San Fran Buff. They obviously had some injury issues, but then the weather kicked in and you had that snow globe effect. And we were like, hey, this is great. All we need is a good game right here and we're home. And we didn't really get a good game. We didn't get a competitive one. So, could we have foreseen that San Fran maybe wasn't going to be the Super Bowl team from 2023? I don't know. What do you think about San Fran this year, right? You assume they're going to rebound. I know they let Debo go, but I assume they signed the quarterback. I assume they're back. Their schedule's a little different than it was last year. They're not coming to the AFC East. They have a slightly different mix of opponents. Like, I think San Francisco is going to be back, but do we go all in too soon? Maybe do we go all in too soon on a Washington now after last year? We were kind of all in, let's say, on Chicago last year. They didn't really pan out the way we hoped, but they added arguably, the biggest name in the coaching ranks in the offseason. That guy probably could have gone anywhere he wanted. Mm-hmm. He chose Chicago. They got better, we think, in the offensive line and free agency. Like, is that a team that you want to lean in on? So some of it is luck of the draw, guys that maybe none of us saw coming as fans or none of us saw backsliding a little bit. But look, we look really smart when Dallas, Green Bay, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, all our traditionally big brands play well or are in playoff chases. That's a little out of our hands. So just trying to strike the right mix. This year's an interesting one just with the way the rotation work. You guys know the AFC East crosses over into the NFC. So you guys all play Dallas, Washington, Philly, Giants.
No, it's NFC South this year for the AFC East.
You guys go to the South. Sorry, the East. The NFC East plays with the NFC North. So you got
Yeah.
all those good games. And then the NFC North plays the AFC North. I was thinking Philly Buff. We've got a Philly Buff in our hands again.
Yeah, you
Yep,
do.
that's right. Because of the extra game.
Some of those one-off games. So,
Yep.
you know, the rotation, the 272 feels bigger. It feels, you know, a little sexier. And so we've got an opportunity maybe to do some stuff that historically we haven't done, whether it's go a little bit bigger on certain windows or spread out the inventory across different partners differently, or have some really good quality inventory for Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock, which is harder and harder to do with more games going off the Thursdays and Saturdays and Sunday mornings at 9:30. So I like the options that we have. It's still going to need a little bit more time. It's got to bake a little bit more. The stew's got to cook just a little longer, but I think we're going to be in a pretty good spot in about a month.
To be a bit more reflective, kind of going off of what Sal's question was, what was your favorite game of last year? The game that you said, man, we hit a home run there. Because I asked you the same question last year, and I loved your answer. You said Eagles Seahawks because it kind of fell into place late.
Yeah.
And I remember you guys were kind of scrambling with that. So what was your favorite game this past season? Do you have one that stands out?
Opener was good.
Look, that's the thing. Like, as we look at last year, some of what we look at isn't just what we got wrong, but what we got right. And where you have like that marker from last year that you have to go out and get. The opener was big. You remember 2 years ago, we went with Detroit into Kansas City, and Detroit wasn't quite there, but they were up and coming. And it was like, hey, you've played your way into this window. Last year, we went pretty big with Baltimore. Now this year with Philly at home on that Thursday, you've got a lot of good options. You got Dallas with Dak coming back. You got Detroit. You've got Washington. Yes, it's a rematch of a 40-point game in the championship, but, you know, getting Debo makes Washington, I think, a little bit of a different proposition. Chicago, Denver, Rams. I feel like you got a lot of good options for kickoff. I would, as I look back, I'll give you maybe it's not my favorite game, but I'll give you kind of a linchpin game from last year. Chicago, Washington. I think it was week 6, and it was that Hail Mary game at the end, right? I think both teams might have been 4-2, or somebody was 4-2 and somebody was 4-1. And if you think about that Hail Mary, you know, whatever, 95% of Hail Marys hit the ground and no harm, no foul. That one hits the ground. Chicago's 5-2. And who knows what that division looks like, and who knows what Caleb does the rest of the way. And Washington maybe is reeling a little bit, and maybe they don't steal a couple of those close wins that they ended up getting. It really ended up sending both of those teams' seasons in totally different directions. And now we're sitting here again heading into 2025. We do have another Chicago-Washington game to play with. So play it early, kind of a reminder of last year's Hail Mary, save it for a little bit later. You think both of those teams are going to be competitive. You do it on a Sunday night, a Monday night, a Thursday night. You have so many options for a game like that. And then you multiply that really by all 272. I'm not sure what my favorite game is for this year yet. We'll see.
All right. So you've been doing this long enough. I've heard you on a couple other platforms give a couple of cool stories, and I'm going to ask you for a story, and you can be as general as you want or specific as you want. Obviously, don't want to get you in trouble with anybody, but give me what it's
already
like.
Got me in trouble.
Give me a phone call that has happened in the past with a team that's mad about their schedule. You can, like I said, you can be as specific or as general. How does that work, and what does it sound like, and what did it sound like?
Yeah, I sort of have a go-to.
Okay.
When I tell this story, when I answer this question, and I think Coach has heard it, so I hope he's not too mad. It was when the Rams were still in St. Louis and Steve Spagnuolo was their coach.
Okay.
And schedule came out and everybody reacted the way they reacted. There's always that visceral, emotional 24 to 48 hours. As you mentioned, it usually comes out kind of late in the week. So you get to Thursday, Friday, the news cycle dies down a little bit. You get through the weekend, you come back in on Monday and you kind of clean up your office and get ready for the quote unquote off season. I was at home probably about a week after the schedule came out. I was in my backyard with the dog. My cell phone rings, number I didn't recognize. And it was Coach Spagnuolo of the Rams. And he said, look, no, you got an impossible job and we'll show up. We'll play anybody you want anytime. Don't worry about it. But just want you to think about something, going forward as a schedule maker here. You looked at the Rams schedule that year, and it was something like they had 6 playoff teams in the first 9 weeks, none of them in the division. And so they didn't really play their first division game until something like week 9 or 10. And coach was look, we'll show up. We'll be there. But as a fan, as somebody who works here, as somebody whose job it is to try to balance out all these factors, a schedule where a team doesn't play a single division game until the second half of the season and has a heavy dose of playoff teams from last year, and nobody knows year over year, right? Good teams backslide, bad teams get better. You never know. But that was something that we've always sort of kept in the back of our minds. He wasn't complaining, and he showed up to every game, had him ready to play. But it was a good note for us. We get so caught up in what's the Sunday night game? What's the Monday night game? What are the ratings projections? How many 3-game road trips do we have? And you sort of miss the forest through the trees sometimes. And if you take a moment, look at every team's schedule as though you were the coach or general manager. And really, as a result of that phone call and the subsequent years, we sort of added to our little scheduling team. And it's not just all us math nerds anymore. Now you've got like a Dawn Aponte who has run NFL teams before, senior football administrative officer down the hall. She sits in on our scheduling meetings and she looks at every schedule, less from a, hey, is this the right thing for the media partners? And more from the perspective as, hey, is this the right thing for the teams? And every now and then, the boss has veto power. Obviously, Commissioner Goodell, Hans Schroeder, our boss who runs the media group, has veto power. Really, the only other person with veto power is Dawn. And if she sees a team schedule in here that she says, we really just shouldn't do that, no matter how good the viewership or the prime time or the doubleheaders or whatever else it is you guys are looking at, we shouldn't do this. She's got that veto power. And that was sort of a extension of that conversation that one day with Coach Spagnuolo in my backyard with my dog. Never forgot it.
It's one of those, like, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed conversations that you remember. Like, that's what I was thinking as you were explaining that. I was like, okay, that feels like when a parent's like, I'm not mad at you, but let's think about
what?
This.
We've gotten similar phone calls from teams who are like, how could you do this? This schedule is so unfair. You guys, conspiracy theory, you had it in for us. And then they go 6-2 right out the gate. So It wasn't us. And then you've got others who are like, I don't even know what to complain about, guys. This is a perfect schedule. Home away, home away, home away. We don't have to go to Florida in September when it's 100 degrees. We don't have to go to Lambeau in January when it's -3. Our buys in week 9. Our primetime games are all at home. My God, this is perfect. Thank you so much. And then they went 5-11. Like, you never know. But the little things that people pick up on and remember, I hope, kind of go into our collective memories and always looking to be better.
When we were getting ready to do the podcast, Sal and I were brainstorming a couple different topics we wanted to talk about. We also asked some of our listeners, like, hey, what would you like us to ask Mike North? And one of the questions that was brought up that was pretty interesting was, how do you guys approach back-to-back or clusters of primetime games? And I think that this is top of mind for Bills fans because last year, 4 of the 6 games to start the season in primetime. So it was like, okay, full steam ahead right out the gate. Does that have any impact? Does a primetime game a team plays in week 2 have any sort of impact on what their schedule looks like in week 3 other than rest? Is there any other things that you need to factor there?
I think for a team like Buffalo, and again, we've been doing this together long enough to remember it really wasn't that long ago that we were talking about a whole lot of Sunday 1:00 games. When a team gets good and has an MVP quarterback and is the kind of must-see television that our network partners hope for, expect, request, we kind of, you can't really get into a routine. So you do end up seeing the same teams kind of over and over again in prime time. And, you factor in some of those 4:25 late afternoon doubleheader games in which I'm sure the Bills will find themselves several times this year, whether it's Kansas City or Philly or any other opponents. Like, you're just going to find yourself in more non-traditional windows, less 1:00 Sunday routine windows. I would think for a team like Buffalo, if we're doing our jobs right, we probably don't want them all in the first half of the season. Seems like Buffalo's a team, historically at least, you'd be led to believe you'd think would be relevant down the stretch. So you can kind of count on a team like Buffalo playing in a big national window or 2 in December, less likely to need or want to flex. And it's harder to flex now these days with all the extra windows and the protections. And it's, if we're doing our jobs, I think we're spreading out the Buffalo national television appearances. But for teams like Buffalo, Kansas City, Philadelphia, Green Bay, Dallas, Pittsburgh, you're talking about probably 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 nationally televised games when you factor in some of these other windows and the doubleheaders. They got to go somewhere. And so, yeah, they might mass up a bunch kind of, in a row somewhere. But again, I think if we're doing our jobs, we probably, still seeing national television games for Buffalo into December. I hope they're not all over with by October. I think that's a team we're going to rely on really from week 1 through week 18.
So do you look though, and does Dawn look at it and go, you guys are really heavy primetime several weeks in a row here. We got to be careful, but we really like these matchups too. So, I mean, how do you balance that?
Right? Look, it's a trade-off. It also comes down to, of those primetime games, is one of them the Thursday night game? Because if it is, yes, short week going in, but those extra couple of days coming out. And whether it's a competitive advantage or not, I don't think the data supports the fact that somebody with 10 days of rest has an unfair advantage over a team with 7 days of rest. But they do get that rest. And there is something to that as you do try to get in and out of a routine. And then obviously, where does the bye week fall? You guys are certainly in the mix for international travel this year. So you don't want too many primetime games either immediately before or immediately after a long trip like that. So there's a balancing act of, we want as many Bills, big games in national windows as we can. They probably shouldn't all be right in a row, and they shouldn't all be, over with by week 8 or don't see them until week 9, something like that.
Now, this goes back to what you said at the beginning. Now, once again, you can tell me I'm out of my mind or whatever. I have a little bit of a schedule conspiracy. I don't even know if it's a conspiracy, but you were just talking about the international games. And at the beginning of the podcast, you brought up a certain quarterback who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, and we don't know if he's going to play. Now, my theory is there's no way the schedule can be made yet, because if Aaron Rodgers is playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, that game is not going to be played in London. How much does a decision like that –
or in Ireland.
Or in Ireland. Yeah. Like, you're not going to play Aaron Rodgers against his former team in Ireland at 9:30 in the morning. So does that have an impact, like his decision, on all of this? And what if there is no decision by the time you need to have the schedule out?
It would certainly be better for us if we knew what he was doing this season. To a certain extent, you're just going to have to lock and load and go. Whether you think he's going to be there or he's not going to be there or he's going to retire or something. I think when you think about a team like Pittsburgh, I think your first thought before you even get to Aaron Rodgers, I think it goes to Coach Tomlin. And I think, it's a lot has been made, never had a losing season. So as we were talking earlier about teams you can count on playing big games that matter, playoff implications late in the year. I don't think we're going to shy away from Pittsburgh, regardless of whether or not we know if Aaron's going to be playing quarterback for them. Certainly you would think if Aaron were playing quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, playing the Pittsburgh Buffalo game in Dublin, on the one hand, maybe not the maximizing of the viewership opportunity that you might get otherwise if it's on NFL Network at 9:30 in the morning on our coast, 6:30 in the morning out there. But I think you can also tell we are convicted to growing our game internationally. And, you got the graphic up there now. These games are all going to matter to us. And I don't think you can just kind of throw anybody in as an opponent and just assume the fans are going to keep showing up. We have to show them that these games aren't just important to us, checking a box, paying lip service. These games are important to us. We're going to put some of our very best games in these windows. So you remember a few years ago, we played Miami, Kansas City.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to be bigger than I think we thought in May when we put it on the schedule. But by the time we got there, both teams had gaudy records. It was a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. I don't remember exactly, but I think that game did 11 million viewers at 9:30 in the morning. So that shows you there's an appetite. There is a ceiling there that I'm not sure we've approached yet. So I wouldn't take Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and Dublin completely off the table just yet. But to your point, there's a lot of other homes for a game like Buffalo, Pittsburgh, especially if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. You could see it, week 1 in a national window. You could see it week 2 is the first Thursday Amazon game. You could see it on a Sunday night, a Monday night. You could see it on Black Friday. You could see it on Thanksgiving night. You could see it on Christmas. There's so many different ways to, deploy that asset, if you will. But I wouldn't completely rule out Dublin. Don't be shocked if you see a big game or two as we continue to build interest in not just, internationally, but also domestically, and maybe eventually with a media partner who may want to take a look at, hey, maybe we'll buy a strip of 5 or 6 international games if you have that many in a year. Got to be some big ones in there too, just to make sure everybody understands there's some variability in there and there's a chance of hitting some high marks as well.
All right, so let's throw that graphic back up there, Mike Robbie, if we can, because I want to ask you another question about this. Can't take Bills and Steelers and Ireland off the table. I think there's an assumption from Bills fans You could take Bills Dolphins, Bills Jets off the table because it's a division game. You can refresh my memory, Mike. Have you guys played division games internationally? What's the policy on that? And oh, by the way, the Bills actually do play 4 of these teams on the road this year. The Dolphins, the Browns, the Jets, and the Steelers, who are all hosting international games.
Yeah. The odds are ever in your favor, certainly.
Yeah.
Teams. The answer to your question is we've played division games internationally before. We did a Jets Dolphins game, and I'm pretty sure we did an Indianapolis Jacksonville game one time. Basically, what ends up happening is once the teams are selected as the home teams, we kind of work with them to figure out which ones are, hey, over my dead body, you can't take this out of my home market. And which ones are, yeah, I'd love to see that one here, but I get it if you want to take it internationally. And others are, oh, I would love for you to take that game internationally. Plus, we're balancing the other side, not just what the home team feels like they're quote unquote giving up, but also what we feel like might be best for the international market. What are the fan avidity for these teams in Dublin, in the UK, in Berlin, in Madrid? Are we trying to grow brands there? Some of these teams have marketing rights in some of these international cities, and so they're showing their ancillary programming, they're selling hats and jerseys, they're coming over for fan fests and stuff like that. So it's not just as simple as, oh, we don't want to play that game internationally. It's really trying to figure out what's the right thing. This is one of 272, but the simple answer to your question is division games are eligible for international, full stop.
Now, and Mike,
there we go, Matt. That's a lot more for us to have fodder to keep talking about on this.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. And I want to give you once again, the opportunity to say this because I feel like this was a common misconception when the Bills went over to London a couple of years ago. The teams, once again, have choice of when they get their bye week if they play an international game. That's correct? That still remains true? Sort of.
What ended up happening with ownership was, hey, gentlemen, we are significantly expanding our commitment to our international games. You guys remember we were playing 1 or 2 a year, and then we were playing 3 or 4. Now we're up to 7 or 8, and the commissioner's out there very publicly talking about someday getting to 10, 12, or even 16. If we ever got to 16 international games, there's just no way we're going to be able to guarantee everybody their bye coming back. And as you hinted at, when you guys went over, you go over, you play in London at 9:30 in the morning on the East Coast. You're playing at 1:30 in the afternoon over there. You're on a plane and you're back in Buffalo by 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
That's earlier than you'd get back from a game in San Fran or Seattle, especially if we put it on a Sunday night or a Monday night. So we are not guaranteeing anybody their buys the week after your international game. Some of that's due to just, the consequences of having this many. Some of it's due to the fact that, some of these international games are going to be played in weeks where we haven't even started the buys yet or finished the buys, right? You think about the Chargers going to Brazil this year or Eagles and Packers going last year. Like you're not taking a week 2 bye. We don't do buys in week 2. If we end up going internationally in weeks 13, 14, 15, we're not doing buys in weeks 15 or 16. So if you don't get your bye, nobody gets their bye. Could you get your bye? Yes, you could. Are you guaranteed your bye? No, you're not. So what'll end up happening is we'll reach out to all of those host teams that you just flashed the graphic up as we whittle down the contenders here for the visiting team over the next couple of weeks. We'll reach out to all of them as well. So I'll reach out to the Bills. I'll reach out to, whomever will want to talk to me about this and just ask them, hey, look, you're a candidate. It's possible. Not saying it's going to happen, but it might. If it does, how do you want to handle the week before? How do you want to handle the week after? If it's this early in the season, would you like the bye if it falls there? Or absolutely not, I don't want the bye there. I'd rather come home to a home game. We'll try to work with the clubs, but to a certain extent, we're not going to be able to accommodate everything. So just want to be fair, just want to be consistent. So the simple answer is yes, we can play a division game, and no, you're not guaranteed your bye the week after.
Mike, is there a department or people that have to be worked with and very on top of political climates around the world when you talk about international games?
Oh yeah.
How does, you think about, you're going to Australia in a couple of years, right? You have games in Spain, you have games in London. We know the political climate here can change, there can change. How does all of that mesh together?
Yeah, there's an international group here in our building led by Peter O'Reilly. The day-to-day guy who's running point on venues and years and dates is Matt Shapiro. And yeah, they very much have to be aware of not just, the political climate here, but the political climate in every place that they're looking at. And I know this year, as we were thinking about Dublin, I think they literally had to wait for the new government to be installed before they could actually sign papers and dot I's and cross T's, and we could actually commit to a game there. So they are looking, 2025. Obviously, we haven't even announced the games yet. We haven't gotten through them. There's a few first-time places for us that we're going to have to commit significant resources to, but those guys are already knee-deep in 2026. You mentioned Australia. I know we'll be back in London. There's talks about other places that we haven't played yet, and I know they're really, pie in the sky looking even further down the road, things like Abu Dhabi and stuff like that. So there's always a, 1, 2, 3 year kind of aim high steering roadmap of, if we do this year, we'll do that next year. Here's a team that hasn't given up a home game yet for an international game. They'd be a perfect candidate to go play in that market. So there's an awful lot of strategic planning looking ahead. It's kind of become the same way we do for Super Bowl right now. We've got a whole team on the ground already out in Santa Clara worrying about this year's Super Bowl. There's a whole separate group of people worried about the Super Bowl in LA 2 years from now. Each one of these international games is sort of like a mini Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So there's whole teams of people that are committing not just to Madrid this year or to Australia next year, but also looking 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Where might we play and who might go over, and how would that work, and when in the season could we do it? And like we said, what's the travel? What's the time zone difference? When's the bye week? There's an awful lot of planning going into that. Yeah.
Sal, do you have any more international questions, or can I switch over to holidays?
I think I might have had one more. No, not international. I will ask you, though, is there an event this year that's impacting stadiums, concerts? I don't think there would be a political convention. There was that a few years ago for an opener. I remember that. Is there something this year, a concert, an act, anything that's impacting several stadiums you have to keep in mind?
I think we're still hearing from Billy Joel. I think he took a tumble and hurt himself and had to delay some of his current tour. And so I think he's trying to piece something back together again. So we're getting some late asks here. Look, we're still, the concert industry is still recovering from COVID. So everybody who can tour is out there touring. So, these buildings are pillars of the community, and they do things other than hosting NFL games. So we try to work with the stadium operators, we work with the teams, we work with the local municipalities, and try to make sure that, if there is an event that you're trying to host in your building, we will do our best to accommodate it. But there's a line we probably shouldn't cross. We shouldn't jeopardize the integrity of the NFL schedule because of a concert act here or a battle of the bands there or something like that. So try to take all the requests seriously and be fair about how we accommodate the ones that we can. But thankfully, there's no one big thing that's impacting everybody this year. There's just death by 1,000 paper cuts. There's always something. And, our football teams share, either, if not buildings, downtown footprints with other stadiums. Some soccer teams are playing in our building now, baseball teams across the street, marathons in Detroit and Chicago and Minneapolis. There's always something. But I suspect we should be able to accommodate most of that without causing too much damage.
I do have one more international map, but this is actually for the Australia game, Mike. Is it determined yet? Will it be Saturday, week 1, or is that yet to be determined? Therefore, you'd have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and allow those teams to come back.
Yet to be determined. That's a long trip, and the way I understand it is to play in prime time here in the States on the East Coast. You're actually playing the following morning, local time. So something like 10:15 a.m. kickoff for an 8:15 p.m. the night before kickoff here in the States. So I'm not sure we'd wait all the way till Saturday or Sunday, because then you are looking at that long flight back. And because it is week 1, they're playing again week 2. So I don't think we want to shorten that week. I suspect if we're going to do it that way, it's probably earlier in the week, more like, a Thursday, maybe even a Wednesday. That's a possibility that we've discussed. But interestingly enough, just culturally over there, they're used to sporting events starting 10 o'clock in the morning, because I think they play a lot of rugby and a lot of cricket. And cricket, I don't know a lot about cricket, but I understand it could go all day.
Yeah.
So they're used to showing up at 10 a.m. for the starting of a sporting match. And maybe that does make some sense for us. Play early in the morning over there. That's the night before here, still in a traditional television window for us. And then by playing in the morning over there, they can get back that night and still have 8 or 9 days before they got to get ready for week 2.
Man, when's Australia? A couple of years? That's when you guys are going?
26, week 1 of the 2026 season, not this year, but
26,
next year.
That's crazy. All right, Christmas Day, right? Last year, I know Christmas has kind of become a thing now. Are 3 games on Christmas because of when it falls in the week, or is this now the new norm, you think?
It's not a guarantee we're going to play 3 every year, but when we can, we will. I think our fans have shown us that they are interested in Christmas. The viewership is there. The attendance is there. The interest from our broadcast partners is there. We added Netflix last year for the first time. We will play on Christmas as appropriate. And look, we talked about this last year, right? We played on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
We played on a Wednesday. We'll play whenever Christmas falls. So we'll have to figure it out the week before, the week after. Is it a short week going in, a short week coming out? At least for this year, we don't have to do what we did last year, which was that 4-team round robin, everybody playing Saturday because they had to play the following Wednesday and they all had to play each other. And we needed 4 teams that all played one home, one away and all played each other. And with any luck, we're all still going to be playoff relevant by the time we got to week 16 and 17. We checked that box. It was a great day and very successful for us. We will almost surely mirror that same approach to Christmas this year. When it falls on a typical NFL day, I'd expect a triple header. If it falls on a Tuesday or something like that, we might want to think about maybe only playing 2 games. But I would expect us to play on Christmas going forward. It's a day that is proven to be successful for us from a fan standpoint, and it brings a different element from a media partner standpoint. You think about a Netflix coming in last year and doing a truly global rights deal for one single sporting event. Don't think that's ever happened before. One rights holder for one single event having global rights, and the fact that they could get to 30 million viewers across the globe and whatever it was, 200 countries watching. I'm sure Beyonce at halftime helped. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a musical element to Christmas again this year, but it is a special day and it's proven to be successful for us. And yeah, I would expect us to be there from here on in.
Can you remind everybody about how the TV partners work on Christmas Day this year?
This year it'll be Netflix in the afternoon, and because it's a Thursday, this one's interesting. When it falls on a traditional NFL day, we have traditional NFL partners. So you're going to have Amazon as a Thursday night game that week. They would have had it that week no matter what. It just happens to be Christmas, so that kind of changes our dynamic about where you'd want to play and who you'd want to play. We've been very successful, whether it's with Kansas City or Baltimore, San Francisco, Philadelphia these last few years. Those are big brands, and those are playoff relevant games, and you can see the interest is there and the fanhood is there. Well, the interest is there then from the media partners as well. So nothing set, I don't think, beyond this year or next year, but for this year you'll see Netflix in the afternoon, Amazon at night, because it's a Thursday, which makes everybody eligible. Nobody has to play the previous Saturday, nothing like that. And then as we move forward, figuring out where the Christmas holiday falls will impact who the media partners are and who's eligible to play.
Do you think the league is open to having that be a day where teams play like they do on Thanksgiving kind of every single year? There was a report out there a couple weeks ago that the Chiefs had some sort of interest in potentially being part of the Christmas rotation. Do you see that as being kind of the plan of like, hey, we would like to have a Cowboys and Alliance
anchor,
like you do on Thanksgiving, an anchor for that holiday?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. I read that too. I think it was in The Athletic. For a team like the Chiefs to volunteer for Christmas while they're busy winning every other Super Bowl or whatever it is, and their tight end is dating the biggest pop star on the planet. Like, sure, the league office would love for the Chiefs to host on Christmas every year. Thanks for volunteering, boys. But I'm not sure that's going to become a tradition quite the way Thanksgiving is. I mean, think about what it took for that tradition, right? The Lions since the 30s, the Cowboys since the 60s. We didn't commit to a third site on Thanksgiving when we brought that back about 20 years ago. We've rotated that around. I imagine we're going to keep rotating Christmas around too, both from the fan standpoint. I know the Chiefs are raising their hands supposedly, but that's a lot to ask your fans. Come out every year on Christmas. Certainly while you're good and you're winning AFC West titles and fighting for Super Bowls, it's easy give. If 5 years from now, after Patrick Mahomes retires and they're not the perennial division champion and in every AFC championship game, I'm not sure we'd want to be married to a site. There's been other teams that have raised their hands to become permanent hosts of things like Black Friday or Christmas. Thus far, we've avoided committing to something like that. Never say never. Let's see what the next few years bring. But I don't think we're today going to commit to, a permanent third host for Thanksgiving, a permanent host for Black Friday, or a permanent host for Christmas.
Mike, before we delve into the actual Bills, schedule possibilities, I want to ask you about them closing out their new stadium. It's been over 50 years. I was just at the topping out ceremony last week. As you know, it's really a big deal here in Buffalo, getting a new stadium. You're going to have getting into the new stadium and how that schedule looks. But this stadium, this year, how much of your planning goes into the fact that this is the final year at Highmark Stadium, and insofar as all the games, but maybe even the last one where, hey, the Bills are probably playing the playoffs anyway at home. We hope so, at least here. So you can't predict that, but you could actually predict and have control of, in your end, who they play in the last regular season game.
Yeah, look, I'm sure it'll be a factor. I'm not sure we're going to build the schedule around it. Like you said, you're hopeful. Some others may well be as well that's not the last game in Buffalo. In week 18, look, we play all division games in week 18. If the Bills end up being home in week 18, any of the division opponents make perfect sense for, the last game in that stadium. If we have you on the road in week 18, who are you playing in week 17 and week 16, something like that last home game, I'm sure it'll be something that we'll watch for, but it's going to be a story whether you're playing a traditional rival or not. I think would be more inclined to try to find a game with, significant playoff implications down the stretch. Because like we said earlier, there's just not a whole lot of teams sitting here in May that you can feel really confident about playing a game with playoff implications in week 17 right now. And Buffalo's got to be on that list. So whether they're hosting a Cincinnati or a Philadelphia or a Baltimore or something like that feels like a pretty big game with significant playoff implications in one, if not both conferences. I think we'd probably lean more towards, celebrating that fact than, we've absolutely positively got to play the Dolphins as the last game in the Bills' existing stadium. I think we'll want a good one in there. We'll want a story if we can find one, but whatever game lands in there is the last one's going to be a story.
Now, understanding we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, and I'll probably ask you the same question if you're able to join us again next year, but would it be a little different for a new stadium? Like, do you want to start a new stadium with maybe a little bit more, hey, like Allen Mahomes has been the thing in the NFL, or Allen Lamar, or something like that? Or you got to go, hey, traditional. Like, we know the Bills and Dolphins have been a rivalry forever. Is that a little bit of a different answer for a new stadium as opposed to an old stadium?
Yeah, it probably is. I think, as you guys well know, first week or two of the season, you're looking for storylines. You're looking for teams going back against old teams, new faces in new places, rookie quarterbacks, free agents, guys coming back off of injury, whatever it is. When you're opening up a new building, that alone is a story. So you think back a few years when we opened up SoFi, or we opened up in Las Vegas. I remember when the Chiefs, they didn't build a new stadium, but they remodeled. I think kind of the opening of new stadiums in and of itself probably makes for a pretty good storyline. And so to your point, you take a Baltimore Buffalo or something like that, if we have one of those again next year, or a KC Buffalo. Again, I wonder if that's not a game better utilized later in the season when both teams have, winning records and playing for playoff positioning, as opposed to week one when we're all still shaking the cobwebs and, the story may well just be the beautiful new building. I suspect we probably don't need to go quite as big for the stadium opener as maybe we might for something that's going to be in December for this year's stadium closer, but anything's possible. Hard to say. We'll certainly talk with the Bills about it as well. Sometimes you might want like a little soft opening with your preseason game and then give us a couple of more weeks to, kick the tires. And maybe we'd prefer to open in week 2 instead of week 1. We'll go ahead and we'll go on the road week 1 and buy ourselves that extra week or two of getting ready and, freshening up the paint, whatever it is we have to do to make sure we're truly ready to go. Or like other buildings have opened up, with something other than an NFL game. Maybe there's a concert or something in there that's the first event in the building, and they've taken tickets, they've sold concessions, they've done the ingress and egress of parking. And so maybe they'll feel like they're ready to go week 1. But you know what? We'd rather do it on a Sunday than a Monday. Let's not ask our fans the first time coming out to our new building to travel out here during rush hour in the weekday. Let's do it on a Sunday. God willing, they win the Super Bowl and you open it on a Thursday. Like, anything's possible. It's all on the table. We'll we'll worry about 26 and 27.
Matt, what did Mike call the Bills and Bengals and Chiefs last year, 2 years ago? The triumvirate or something? Was it?
No, I think it was
Holy
like the
Trinity.
Holy Trinity.
The Holy Trinity. I love it. All right. So you had the Holy Trinity. You called them. That was great. Now you have here in Buffalo. I understand he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. He was on the cover of Madden. He's now won the NFL MVP. Josh Allen. He's getting married to a superstar actress. Has he even elevated even higher to what the public wants to see and how the league views the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen and where you want to put him on the schedule?
Undoubtedly.
Wow.
When we started having these calls, I remember we were hitting you like with that steady run of Thanksgiving, right? I think you went to Dallas once for Thanksgiving. I think you went to New Orleans for Thanksgiving. And it was sort of like, hey, everybody, meet the Bills. And what a fun way to do that. And it was almost like, oh, hey, they're a fun opponent. It's flipped the other way. Now they're the draw. And so you don't necessarily need that big other brand to make a Bills game relevant. Every Bills game is relevant. Every Bills game matters. And Josh has definitely ascended into that. What did he do today? Sort of, you can't really get through a weekend of highlights and news and stats without checking on the Bills quarterback. And that's what being an MVP does. That's what winning football games does. Obviously marrying the actress doesn't hurt, but he was a superstar in the making for a couple of years. Hard to say he's not there now. And like we've been talking about, like you talk about the quote Holy Trinity or whatever, you probably have to make it a holy foursome, if that's the right word. You throw Baltimore, Cincy, Buffalo, Kansas City. Like you're talking about those four teams seemingly battling for AFC supremacy, hopefully for the next 10 years. Which means if they keep all winning their divisions, they're all going to keep playing each other over and over and over again. So there's going to be those really high-end Bills games when they're playing Kansas City, when they're playing Cincy, Baltimore, Philly. But every Bills game is going to matter if they're playing the Jets, if they're playing the Dolphins, if they're playing, we run Houston back, a couple of division winners. Atlanta seems to be right on the cusp. Tampa's a division winner. Like all those games are going to matter. And now you could see Buffalo kind of pulling some of those guys along into bigger windows because of Josh, because of the team, because of their record, and because of their success. Obviously, I know everybody's waiting for the breakthrough and to, win a couple games in January and get to a Super Bowl and hopefully get that ring. But that's how these things happen. You kind of play your way into prime time, and then you earn your way into the Super Bowl.
Don't mean to cover your face there, but you could see the names on the screen there, Mike. We can go back to that. It is interesting. The home schedule is crazy when it comes to names. I mean, it really is. We actually had listen, obviously you're not going to reveal the schedule here. We had a good
I don't know the schedule. I can't even reveal it.
We had a good question on WGR in Buffalo here. Mike Shope, who's also a schedule geek like all of us, he said, Sal, what do you think the odds are that the Ravens, the Bengals, the Chiefs, and the Eagles, how many of them will be Sunday at 1? He said, I don't think any of them. And I said, you're right. Maybe not. Sunday at 1 for any of those games feels like it's out of place, to be quite honest with you. That's how big it is.
Feels like a waste, right? We've got 272, assets here. The fans have 272 assets. We're not doing our jobs if we're putting the best of those assets into windows where only 30% of the fans can watch it. So I would tend to agree with you. I'd be surprised if any of those four found themselves at 1 o'clock on a Sunday. They may not all, like we said earlier, find themselves in prime time.
Right.
Don't forget that Sunday 4:25 window is still the most watched window that we have. And if we're really trying to push all the way to, up against the ceiling, I remember we did an Eagles-Bills game in the 4:25 window just a few years ago, right?
Yep.
Going to overtime? It might have gone into
fantastic game in overtime. In the rain, it was a great game, actually.
It's something like 32 million viewers. Like that's more than we're ever going to do, or at least historically have ever done in prime time. So every time you take a game and you put it in prime time, by taking it out of Sunday at 4:25, you're kind of sacrificing some viewership. So you got to be really careful about which ones find their way into prime, which ones are left behind for Sunday at 4:25. And there's still probably going to end up being a good one or two Sunday at 1 o'clock. That's the beauty of the way we can be a little flexible. Maybe the 1 o'clock moves to 4 o'clock, or the 1 o'clock moves to 8 o'clock, or now even moves to Monday night or to Thursday night. I mean, we're always trying to figure out which of these very best games that we deployed strategically in May panned out, and great, way to go. We were smart. Others, maybe we were just a little bit short-sighted on. Now it's turned into something bigger than we thought. Let's move it into a bigger window so more fans can appreciate it.
It might just be because it's what's right in front of me. And obviously we cover the Bills for a living, so we see it so often. But I swear, it feels like every time the Bills play in one of these big window games, there is some sort of ridiculous audience that goes with it. It's like, oh, the Bills and the Chiefs played each other and the entire country watched. And then a couple weeks later, it's, oh, the Bills and the Lions played each other. And oh my goodness, once again, like the entire country watched. Is there a point, though, when you need to like peel it back to make sure you're propping other teams? Like, how do you figure out that balance? Because I'm sitting here going, why don't you just put the Bills in that window like every single week?
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. It's something we're wrestling with a lot, given how we've deployed the Kansas City games these last few years. You know, you think back a couple of years ago, we played our first wild card game on a streaming service on Peacock, and everybody's like, hey, this cannot fail. Well, you want to make wild card on Peacock a thing, you put a Kansas City Chiefs game there.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years ago, it was, Black Friday. You want to make Black Friday a thing, you put a Kansas City Chiefs game there. Last year, we had Netflix, first time ever broadcasting an NFL game on Christmas. You want to make Wednesday, Netflix, Christmas, NFL a thing, you put a Kansas City Chiefs game there. Like, we do need to, build other muscles. We do need to be able to go to a deeper well than just Kansas City and Dallas every year. And sort of like we've been saying, this is funny. We should probably go back and rewatch our podcast from 5 years, 10 years ago. We said Buffalo was coming. We said this was going to happen. And this might be, somewhat beyond our wildest expectations, obviously short of the Super Bowl ring, which hopefully is coming. But to your point, they're here. They're not just coming, they're here. And every time we put them in a national window, especially when you put them against another big brand, they play an exciting brand of football. The quarterback's a superstar, and that's what fans want to watch. So the more we can put big Bills games in big national windows, the better it is for our fans, the better it is for our media partners, and hopefully the better it is for the Bills.
Is that – I remember growing up, Mike, and it was always – and now granted, the Bills weren't as good, but even in the Super Bowl years, before we had all this explosion of all these TV partners and all the games you guys have, yes, they were put there. But for many years, it was, well, they're a small market. The league doesn't want to put small markets on. You got to have New York, Chicago, LA. Does that matter anymore? Because the league has basically – it does not matter who's on. People watch the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that Buffalo-Kansas City game from a few years ago, right? That divisional playoff game, the 50, 55 million, whatever it was. I mean, those are pretty small markets when you compare them to the Philadelphias and the Chicagos and the Los Angeleses and even the Atlantas and the Houstons of the world. I mean, those are two small market teams delivering an audience that, we'd never seen before on that weekend. As long as the Bills and the Chiefs keep playing each other every year, I expect similar size viewership. So I think the market size matters less than it does. We've become, like you said, there's so many more national windows. So it wasn't that long ago that almost every game was truly just kind of local. Right. Now there's so many more national windows, and you end up, like we said, kind of putting the same teams over and over again into those national windows because they're the ones who have deserved it, played their way into prime time. So they build a national fan base beyond just kind of local interest. And, it's hard to sustain it. The league is set up, really to kind of prevent dynasties, right? You draft in reverse order, you got a salary cap, the waiver wire, everything we do is really to kind of everybody revert back to the mean and nobody really kind of run and hide. Makes what the Patriots did for those 20 years even more impressive. But it's a moment right now where, like we said, in the AFC, especially, all these quarterbacks, all these teams continuing to win, continuing in the divisions, continuing to play each other in January playoff games and memorable January playoff games. This is how you build a national fan base. We wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't put those games in the regular season in big windows.
I think for us in Buffalo, it was a little foreign because it had been so long since they were so good. But let's say 4 or 5 years ago when we started having this conversation, when the Bills and Chiefs became what the Bills and Chiefs are, I think we were all like, oh, that screams Sunday Night Football, or oh, that screams Monday Night Football. And then the league, hit us with a, hey, 425 CBS window. And then it was again. And then it was again. Is this kind of one of those, if it's not broke, let's not try and fix it? Or is it like a, hey, we think this is our maybe biggest window of the regular season. We need to attach our biggest ticket to that window.
Yeah, look, and if you're CBS and you've had Kansas City Buffalo at 4:25 in the afternoon the last few years, and you had them divisional round, and you're doing these monster numbers, when David Burson and his team come in to meet with us, right around Super Bowl and start thinking about the 2025 schedule, priority number 1, 2, and 3 for them is the Buffalo Kansas City game. It's not a birthright. We may well find ourselves using Buffalo, Kansas City on Sunday night or Monday night or Thursday night or anywhere. It could go anywhere, literally. It's not a birthright, but we've had a lot of success there. And like we said, that's our most watched window. You take a game that could do 30 million viewers on a Sunday afternoon and you put it in a different window where really the ceiling might be 25 million. That's 5 million of our fans that are going to miss one of the best games of the year. Can we make it up to CBS or NBC in another way? Probably. We're in a good spot right now. We're fortunate. I hope we're doing a good job deploying these assets for our fans, and we're getting good average, good viewership numbers for all of our partners. But yeah, you got to kind of think about what's the best use of that one game and multiply that conversation by all 272 and try to literally get maximum value out of every single one of them so that the games that our fans most want to see, they're going to be able to see. You can do that in prime time. You do it on a Sunday afternoon. Maybe the universe is a little bit bigger. The funnel's a little bit bigger, but there's definitely some fans that day who won't get to watch Buffalo, Kansas City because they're watching a Niners game, a Seahawks game, a Cardinals game, a Broncos game. So trying to balance it out with, everybody wants to see that game, but that one's pretty good too. And so is that one. So if CBS doesn't get Buffalo, Kansas City, but they get Buffalo, Philly, or Philly, Kansas City, they're probably going to be okay over the course of 18 weeks.
Mike, how has the Black Friday game gone for you guys the first couple of years here? We know the Bills could very well be in the mix. You've mentioned them already for something like that. How's it gone for the league?
It's growing. I mean, it's rare to play a game at 3:00 in the afternoon on a quote unquote holiday. Like some of us work that day. It's not a day when we're all sitting home the way Thanksgiving is. Did about 10 million viewers for the first year, which was Dolphins Jets, was supposed to be Aaron Rodgers. He obviously only lasted 4 plays. Last year, like we said, you want to make Black Friday into something bigger. You put a Kansas City Chiefs game there. We did. It did closer to 13 or 14 million viewers. If we want to keep growing that window and making it into something that fans circle on their calendars and plan around for what is a very busy sports weekend, right? We play on Thursday. Now we're playing Friday. Colleges always have a big game on Saturday. We got a full slate on Sunday. We got a game on Monday. That's an awful lot of days of football, but it's also just an awesome weekend of football. So we are committed. Amazon is committed to growing that. And if you think about as far as partners for Windows goes, you think about Black Friday and the retail day that has become. Amazon really is kind of the perfect partner for that. So they've got an opportunity to do a lot of fun stuff with retail and click to buy and all that kind of stuff. But it's got to be a game that people care about. It's got to be something that makes the fans think, yep, I'm going to make sure that I'm in front of a television at 3:00 and wouldn't be shocked at all to see a Bills game deployed there.
We talk about obviously the Bills because that's where we are. We're in Buffalo, and a lot of our audience is listening to this in Buffalo. What are some of your other kind of marquee matchups that won't miss, that is going to be a hit no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, look, Philadelphia, far and away, I think the best team in the league down the stretch last year. They've got a spectacular schedule this year. Like we said, they played Detroit, they played Green Bay, they play Buffalo, obviously, plus the 2 games against Dallas. So I like Philly. I like their schedule. I think Detroit's schedule is outstanding. We hinted at Buffalo's schedule. A sleeper team, maybe New York Giants. New York Giants have a phenomenal schedule. They really do. And with a veteran quarterback presence there and Russell Wilson, everybody just kind of looks at the record and thinks, oh, they must be terrible. They really weren't. As somebody who lives in New York and watched most Giants games, like it felt like they were in most games last year, even with the rotating quarterbacks and all the injuries they had. Like, I think the Giants have a really interesting schedule. I'm not sure if we're going to put them in 6 or 7 primetime games in May, but you're going to find yourself playing a lot of big games maybe down the stretch that matter if they can be competitive. A lot of question marks. We hinted at San Francisco. Do they rebound with a different schedule than they had last year? Curious, obviously, about Minnesota. 14 wins with Darnold. Now what with J.J. McCarthy? Who knows? We talked about Pittsburgh. Not 100% sure yet who their quarterback is, but I think you're going to see a lot of the usual suspects, if you will. Because they all kind of play each other this year, but an opportunity for some of these guys who have kind of up and coming, played their way into these opportunities, these windows, sort of like Buffalo maybe was a few years ago. Maybe that's what we're looking at with a team like Washington right now, kind of dormant for a while, but obviously made a name for themselves down the stretch and through the playoffs. Can they continue to ascend? Can they continue to break through? And that's a team with a national fan base, given their success from decades ago. It's kind of lying dormant. It would be interesting to see what happens if they could kind of rebound and be good and be relevant again for a few years in a row. Gives the schedule makers a few more assets to play with.
We know the Bills are not going to be on that opening Thursday night game because they play the Eagles in Buffalo. We know the Eagles will host the opening Thursday night game. Mike Robbie, if we can throw that graphic back up, I want you, Mike North, to go through and look at that home schedule and give me a good argument for several of these teams about why you could place them in the opening game at Philadelphia.
Absolutely give you an argument for all 8 of their home opponents. Absolutely.
Okay.
Every single one. Washington, I know the last time we saw them, it was a 30-point game in the NFC Championship game, but they added Debo, and they did beat Philly in Philly last year. So you do have 2 Philly-Washington games. Using one of them in week 1 would make a lot of sense. Same with Dallas. Dallas-Philly is usually one of the top matchups of the season. We haven't really gotten that maximum value out of Dallas-Philly the last couple of years. You remember last year they played a game in October on CBS, and then their game in December, we actually ended up moving out of the 4:25 window. We moved it back to 1 o'clock. So new coach, Dak returns, week 1, Dallas-Philly. You know the Philly fans will be up for that. Giants, like we said, Russell Wilson, never more interesting than they are in week 1. I could certainly see a turnpike game in week 1. The Bears, like we said, played in a lot of national windows last year. They didn't have the record that they wanted, but they were competitive. Remember, they took Detroit right down to the wire on Thanksgiving Day. That game peaked at 49 million people watching late afternoon. They're right there. And I think if Caleb continues to get better, and obviously Coach Johnson probably had his pick of jobs, and he chose to go to Chicago with Caleb, that tells you something. Detroit and Philly, probably the 2 best teams in the NFC last year, would make a great opener. Denver, playoff team, Coach Payton, another year in that system with Bo Nix. I think that would be fun. Vegas, new coach, new quarterback, reuniting, right? Gino and coach in Vegas. I could certainly play that one. And the Rams, for whatever it's worth, always play the East Coast teams tough. There's this weird bias about the West Coast teams coming east and struggling. If you're playing like a 1 o'clock Eastern, that's a 10 a.m. body clock, if you will, for the West Coast teams. The Rams are dominant in 10 a.m. body clock games over these last few years. I don't know what McVay feeds them or how he has them sleep playing, but they've been dominant in 1 o'clock Eastern time kicks. I could certainly see that as an 8:15 Eastern time kick. Stafford in Philly, first game.
Rematch of last year's playoff game.
A really good playoff game that came down right to the wire, right? One more completed piece, and holy cow, we're not even talking about the Eagles as the champ. So I can make a case for every single one of them, and kind of like we've been saying, kickoff, it's the first game after however many months without football. Like, we're all so excited. Honestly, the 3 of us and 8 friends could probably play Philly. People will watch. It's just, it's that kind of window. But we proved last year, we put a Baltimore KC game in there, went to the wire, right? With the kid's foot on the toe on the white in the back of the end zone. 28-something million viewers. There is a very high ceiling on kickoff. And like we said, just the way the 272 kind of work out this year, we could probably afford to go with something maybe a little bit bigger than we normally would and really get the season off to a strong start.
Mike, is there any sort of correlation with the TV partner that you have for a specific Super Bowl and kind of setting them up with a better slate of games during the season? Does that mean anything or have any impact on things for you?
It really doesn't. I mean, it'll be interesting to think about next season when ESPN and ABC come back into the fold for a Super Bowl. We haven't had an ABC Super Bowl in a few decades. But CBS, Fox, NBC, as they have been rotating through Super Bowls, they've all got great games. And likely they're going to actually have a game to produce in the city where the Super Bowl is being played, so they can kind of do a dry run of here's 40, 50, 80 cameras. What if we put one here? What if we, put robos in the locker room and follow the teams as their walkout? Like, all the things that you see at a Super Bowl, those networks try to do, for a regular season game as a dry run. So nothing really different for CBS, Fox, or NBC. It'll be interesting to see if we want to think about something a little different for ESPN and ABC next year as they come back for that first Super Bowl in LA.
We've been doing this long enough, Mike, where I actually remember asking you, what would a 17th game look like as far as the rotation? And here we are several years into it. So I'll ask you about an 18th game now, because it seems like there's growing sentiment. There could very well be an 18th game, maybe even before the new collective bargaining agreement expires sometime in the next few years. What are your thoughts as a schedule maker, a guy that's done this historically, on what would be the best way to approach that from you and your department?
Yeah, wearing my schedule maker's hat, I'd love to see another standings-based game. I'd love to see another 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, just creating more of that really big inventory, increasing the likelihood of a Super Bowl rematch or something like that. As the schedule maker, I like more 1s versus 1s. As an NFL fan, I wonder, when does it become too much of a gap between, that first place schedule and that fourth place schedule? Right now, you've got 3 standings based games. Do you go to a fourth? You're starting to widen the gap. And you at some point have to wonder, yes, you're chasing viewership and obviously revenue and, being good to your fans, but also at the end of the day, we're all competing for a championship here and you want to be fair. So I say we want to, walk right up to that line of competitive inequities and make sure that we don't cross it. But strictly as a schedule maker, if we are going to expand the season, that's a whole lot more television windows that we're going to have to find good inventory for. And again, it can't just be Buffalo and Kansas City and Dallas and Green Bay and Philly over and over again. So creating more diverse inventory where the better teams play each other, or at least the better teams from last year play each other. I certainly like that as a schedule maker, but as a fan, I recognize the challenge of beginning to drift a little bit further and further away from that equity of, why is my schedule so much tougher than theirs? And you talk about a team like San Francisco, right? They finished 4th in that division last year. Mm-hmm. That means 3 extra games against teams that also finished 4th. And whether you're the Rams or the Seahawks or the Cardinals, like, you're playing a tougher schedule than the Niners are. And the Niners are a year removed from a Super Bowl. 1 more standing space game means 1 more last place team that a team like San Fran might get to play. And as long as they're healthy again and competitive again, I just worry that might be just a little bit unfair. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversation, competition committee, general managers, head coaches, what's the right thing to do? What's the fair thing to do? But strictly as somebody who is trying to find really good games for a lot of national television windows over a course of a lot of different weeks, I love the idea of adding a few more 1s versus 1.
If I may, hold on, Matt, before you get to your next one, would there ever be a consideration of like a geographical rivalry based?
That's what I was going to say. I was just going to say that was my
You go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think we talked about this when we were talking about the 17th game. You got Jets, Giants, you got Chargers, Rams, you got Ravens, Commanders. Like, there's a handful that make perfect sense. 2 issues. One is just by rotation, you're going to end up playing those guys every 3 years or 4 years anyway. So now you're going to play them twice. Like, you only play your division opponents twice. You don't play out of conference or out of division teams twice. And as we're building out these rivalries, you probably get about halfway through the league. Steelers, Eagles. I don't even know what you guys would point to for
Lions. Bills, Lions.
Good one. I like that. But then what, right? Who does the Titans play? At some point it kind of runs out. Could we manufacture rivalries? Heck yeah. If you play each other year after year, you become a rival. Sure. We've definitely talked about that. I wouldn't take it off the table for the 18th game, but I think we're pretty happy with the way the 17th game worked with that interconference against a division that you're not playing last year, didn't play, or not playing next year, didn't play last year. So you're getting a little bit more variety in there. And again, standings based just kind of builds on the need for, some of that higher quality inventory.
One of the things Sal and I have talked about in the past, and the NFL is obviously such a machine and the numbers are so big that I don't really think you guys are in the position to be tweaking things. But at the same time, hey, why not try something new? Have you ever considered like staggered start times? Have you ever considered like hey, instead of a week where it's just 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8:20, a week where it's 1 o'clock, 2:30, 4, 5:30, 7, like something like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you see what happens, we just got through March Madness. Like, as a sports fan, it's awesome to be flipping around and there's always something else going on. So if this game's out of hand, bang, there's another game to go to. And then you can catch the endings of all of them. And that part's really fun. And you see it a little bit. I think Scott Hansen on NFL Network calls it the witching hour, but you see it a little bit as the 1 o'clock games come to an end. There's 8, 9 games going on all at once. And here's a game-winning field goal. Here's a game-sealing interception. Here's an onside kick recovery. Like, it's fun to be able to see the ends of all the games. So absolutely could see a world, maybe not in this current set of media deals when you got CBS and Fox in the afternoons leading into NBC at night. Like, you got to be careful about the windows that everybody purchase. But looking ahead, I could absolutely see some open-mindedness to something a little bit more fun, a little bit more staggered. And, I don't think we ever want to get to like a pay-per-view model necessarily. There's something to be said for free over-the-air television delivery, and that's where the mass audience comes from for us. But I could certainly see a world where we tinker just a little bit. And you're right. It's good to be the king. Things are going well, but we're never going to stop tinkering. We're never going to stop trying to innovate. You know, it wasn't that long ago that baseball was the number one sport in this country, horse racing, boxing. Like, okay, it's us for now, but we're not going to stay here by continuing to do the same things over and over again. That's why you see things like the international games or the commitment to flag football or the streaming partners becoming a viable home for our games. There's always something to tinker with, always something to innovate with. I love the idea. Some staggered starts would be fun.
You've done that with Monday Night Football. You've had
Yeah,
these
a little
doubleheaders.
bit with Monday night. Still trying to figure out the exact right overlap for that.
Yeah.
Is it 5 minutes? Is it an hour and a half? At least you have two separate television networks within the Disney family there between ESPN and ABC. You know, how would that work in a market with CBS and Fox? You know, you think about like a digital partner, maybe like a YouTube TV who can show you 6 or 8 games at once. There's a lot that we can consider. There's a lot we can think about. And, you know, God knows what the world looks like in 5 years, right? 5 years ago, I'm not sure any of us could have imagined it like it does now.
Right.
None of us know what it's going to look like in 5 years. So we'll be nothing if not open-minded.
Will you have Monday Night Football doubleheaders this year?
Yeah, we'll have a few. Just in our existing contract that they wanted some inventory for ABC. And like I said, we're still trying to tinker with the right mix of overlaps. I mean, you guys were in one with, what was it, Tennessee a few years ago. You know, it's a game that otherwise would have been most likely Sunday at 1 o'clock. So you weren't going to see it anyway. And now here it is on a national television distribution platform on a Monday night. You don't want to watch it. You don't have to watch it, but it's there if you want to. And like we say, the staggered starts, you get halftime of your game. You can go see live football going on. You come back to yours when this one ends. Hey, fourth quarter of the other one. So it's not a bad thing for the fan. I'm not sure we've completely figured out the exact right overlap. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were playing 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock in week 1 and playing a true doubleheader there and 6 uninterrupted hours of football. Maybe we try that once or twice this year. Working with our friends at Disney, trying to figure out, you know, the right way to learn a little bit more about that. But again, it's an opportunity to take a game that otherwise nobody would have seen, or maybe only 15% of the country would have seen. And now it's at least available in 100% of the country. Watch it if you want. If it's in your way and you're not interested, just watch the game you were going to watch on Monday night. No harm, no foul.
Mike, is there an entity or a league or something that you guys have kind of taken great creative, like, guidance from, or like, hey, I really like what they are doing and I want to try and implement that in a way that we can put out the best product possible? Yeah,
look, I think we all steal from each other, right? I mean, there is such a thing as best practices, and when you see something that's working really well, you'd love to see if you can adapt it to your game. You think about the dynamic kickoff, right? That came from another league, and that was something that we hadn't done before. We saw it deployed and used and thought it would be good for our game. We've learned a lot, I think, as we continue to expand our international footprint about European soccer. I don't know how much you guys watch, but man, I love the notion of the visiting team section, right? I know they have to do it so they don't all, you know, riot. Maul each other, but I love when the visiting team scores a goal, they know right where to go to celebrate, and you get that great camera shot of thousands of people going wild, even though it's the visiting team that scored. So we haven't done something like that just yet, but I would love to see something like that for us. Could we have a visiting team section instead of sprinkling, you know, a handful of Jets fans throughout all the Bills fans at a Bills home game? Put them all in one section, and A, for their safety, and B, for their celebration, you know, and they're with their friends. And when the Jets score, you know, they know right where to go to celebrate. And there's that great camera shot of somebody celebrating a Jets touchdown instead of 60,000 disappointed faces. That's interesting television. It's different television, but I love the idea of a visiting team section. I wonder if that's something we couldn't co-op someday.
Operational question. You guys have this group of games you put on a TBD.
Yep.
What weeks are those on a Saturday? If you want to refresh me.
Usually week 17.
Week 17. How do you determine which games are the TBD? And then how do you determine which games actually go on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, this stems from, I think it was a Baltimore Indianapolis game on NFL Network. This has got to be 6-8 years ago by now, but you know, NFL Network has a package of games. They take some of the early morning Sundays internationally, and then they end up taking some late season Saturdays. And you know, like we've been talking about here for the last hour, you're trying to find games that are going to be relevant, that are going to matter 5 months from now, 8 months from now. Like, what do any of us know? It's sports, right? So to pick games today that we think are going to have playoff implications in December is a tough putt. So we scheduled a Baltimore Indy game for NFL Network that was two teams coming off playoff runs from the previous year. And by the time we got to it, it had fallen apart. There's nothing good for the NFL to have, teams that are out of playoff contention, quarterback injuries, already kind of looking ahead to next year, playing in national television windows. So we created this TBD pool and we told 5 games, 10 teams, hey, look, we'll decide when we get there. You might be Saturday, you might be Sunday, be flexible, be ready. 3 of you are going to be Sunday, 2 of you are going to be Saturday, or vice versa, whatever it is. The first year or two we did it, I think there was some confusion. I think the fans especially, couldn't really wrap their minds around, what do you mean I don't know what day I'm playing?
Right.
But now you think about flexible scheduling for, Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night, every game's kind of scheduled in pencil. Like, none of us know anything. We'll figure it out when we get there. And if that means a handful of games, we will just highlight as TBD. We don't know yet. Could be Saturday, could be Sunday. Heck, could be Thursday, could be Monday. We'll know when we get there. How do you pick them? Same sort of kind of like betting on the come, like which are the teams that maybe haven't played a whole lot of national television already. And so you want to have a couple where, hey, maybe they've played their way into a national window. Like we mentioned before, maybe it's the Giants, maybe it's the Bears, maybe it's the Seahawks, the Vikings, teams that maybe we're not 100% sure of what they're going to look like. You put them in a TBD window, and if when you get there they are playoff relevant, you move them into a national television window. If not, you slide them back to Sunday afternoon. They're still relevant in New York and Charlotte and, New Orleans or wherever else, but maybe not as nationally relevant. So you put a handful of games in a TBD pool. You decide when you get there the best deployment of those assets. And the truth is, quite honestly, all of our games are TBD, really. Anybody could move. Anybody could bounce. We try not to be haphazard or reckless about it. We're very conservative, really no more than 1 or 2 a year, hopefully. But you saw last year we moved a Thursday night game. The year before we moved a Monday night game. If it's the right thing for the fan and the teams can adjust and operationally they can figure it out, I'd like to believe our fans could figure it out as well.
Mike, how much does the 2024 schedule impacts the 2025 schedule? And I mean, hey, the Bills played in Houston week 4. We can't do that again. Or we really liked how that worked. Let's do it again. Or, oh, the Bills opened at home, so this year they need to open on the road. Do you look at any of that stuff, or does that not matter once the season's done?
The only stuff we really look at is if there was something truly competitively inequitable, truly something onerous. Did a team, have to do a road Monday night followed by a road cross country against a team coming off their bye or something like that? It's less about year to year and it's more about kind of over the last few years. So if you found yourself, 3 of the last 4 years with the earliest possible bye, or 4 of the last 7 years playing your short week Thursday game on the road or something like that. Try not to be too reactive year over year because these things tend to even out. It's all cyclical and bad luck moves around. And like we said earlier, sometimes you give a team what you think is a really brutal schedule and they steamroll through it without batting an eye. So you don't need to overreact to it for next year. And other times you thought you gave a team a perfectly fair schedule and they really struggled. Do we have to give them an even fairer schedule next year? I try not to react too much to, 1 year, but if there's a, steady stream of data, a few years worth of patterns, hey, you know what? It is time to give them a later bye, or now, frankly, give them an earlier bye. We've got buys in week 14 now. If a team hits the week 14 bye over and over and over again, they might kind of come to us and say, hey, you know what? Week 6 is just fine. Like, that's too long to wait. Multiple short weeks on the road, rest disparity, like we said earlier, playing in Florida in September when it's really hot, playing in Lambeau or Buffalo or Philly or New York when it's really cold in December, just trying to make sure these things even out and having honest, frank, sometimes difficult conversations with our clubs, hey, we'll pay what we owe, but what do we owe? What have we done? And it's hard when, the team wins the Super Bowl, they can't really turn around and say, oh, you really stuck it to us last year. Like, really? You won the Super Bowl. Like, what could you have done? But everybody is an expert and everybody has an opinion and our teams have very long memories. And, for somebody like me who's been around this long, like I'm almost part of the furniture now, like I can remember 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And so I know what's important to our teams. And like we said, maybe everybody's just a little bit disappointed on schedule release day, but hopefully not in the exact same way they were disappointed last year. And hopefully not really disappointed because we really missed on something that we shouldn't have missed on.
Speaking of buys, what's the discussion around maybe a second buy once you do, and if you do go to an 18th game? That's been the talk. I mean, you're already expanding the season by an extra weekend. And by the way, have you determined if that would be at the beginning end or at the end of the season, 2 buys, and how the schedule looks with 18?
All of it in play. All of it's being discussed. All of it's possible. Could we start the season on Labor Day? We could. We used to. But, a lot of people travel and a lot of people are away. It's not really a, television viewing weekend. But we could. We could move the season a little bit later and try to get that Super Bowl to President's Day weekend. That'll be fun. It's going to land on President's Day weekend, not this year, but next year, the 26th Super Bowl, February of 27. It's going to land there if we do nothing. So if we do something, then we're going to miss President's Day weekend. Again, fan versus schedule maker. Schedule maker, I like 1 buy. 18 games over 19 weeks. And the reason is because you guys know this, like now you've got 32 buys. They're all kind of in the middle of the season, right? Weeks 5 or 6 through about week 13 or 14. There's some weeks in there where the Sunday afternoons, they get a little thin, right? You've got 6 teams on bye, somebody playing Thursday, somebody playing European games. Like you might only have 8 or 9 games. So you get some thin Sunday afternoons. You want to cram 32 more buys into this middle portion of the schedule? Those thin weeks are going to get thinner. And that's going to be a real challenge for the scheduled team as they're trying to put together this jigsaw puzzle and try to figure out how to have good inventory for all of our partners every week. So as a schedule maker, I like 1 buy. As a fan, 20 weeks of regular season NFL football instead of 19 weeks of regular season football, of course, sign me up. But it's going to bring with it some challenges. And this is a whole nother conversation that you shouldn't have with me. You should have with like Dawn Aponte or somebody. There's data, I think, really that says, it wasn't that long ago. You come out of your bye week and you had an advantage, right? There was that stat about Andy Reid, 8 weeks, 8 years in a row, 10 years in a row, whatever. He always won coming out of his bye week. Now with the way the CBA works and the days off and stuff like that, like I think it's going the other way. I think something like maybe 5 of the 16, I don't remember exactly what it is, but somebody could look it up. I think you're actually almost at a disadvantage now coming out of your bye week competitively, and you're at a little greater risk maybe for injury. You shut it down for 4 days and now you're trying to ramp it back up again. I wonder if, it's the right thing to have a second bye, both competitively and for a player health and safety standpoint. So nothing set in stone yet, nothing done. When are we start? How many weeks? How many buys? How many international games? When do we end? Where's that 18th game going to come from? Are we even going to do it? Right? We were 40 years of 16-4. We've been 3 years of 17-3? Like, I'm not sure this is going to happen tomorrow, but if it does, there's still a lot of decisions to be made, and I'm sure a lot of voices to be heard.
Safe assumption, if a team plays on Thanksgiving, they're probably not playing on Christmas Day, or same thing, if a team plays on Black Friday, they're probably not playing on Christmas Day. Is that a fair assumption, or is it, hey, not so fast? Like you could be in both of those windows.
Wait, before you answer, Mike, I remember a few years ago, I believe the Steelers were on Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's in the same.
Yeah, I think it happened to Detroit one year. I think I remember playing a Barry Sanders, Terrell Davis game on Christmas, and obviously Thanksgiving is always in Detroit. So,
good point.
Look, the more games we're going to play on these dates, the more possibility that it's going to happen to the same teams over and over again. I think, again, from a fan friendliness standpoint, kind of the Kansas City question earlier, I don't think we want to keep hitting the same teams over and over and over again. But again, I don't think I want to overreact to 1 year. I think we want to look at a few years in a row. And if you think about the last couple of years, we've had this really good success on Christmas, but Baltimore, for instance, Baltimore played at San Fran 2 Christmases ago, played on Christmas this year. I'm not sure they're raising their hand to play on Christmas again. That being said, Lamar and a team that we think is going to be playoff relevant down the stretch could check a lot of boxes for us for a Netflix or an Amazon on Christmas. So never say never, but I'd like to think that we would be sensitive to it. I'm sure we'll hear from the teams. And again, maybe not in a 1 or a 2 year window, but over the course of 3, 4, 5 years, we shouldn't hit anybody with the same inequity over and over again.
I'm sure the Bills are very much a candidate to be in those windows this year, and in future
territory.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Mike, we've kept you long enough. We appreciate your time. I have one more.
All day. Hit me.
Thank you. All right, playoffs.
Yep.
Any change to the schedule? How you guys dole up the games with Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And I'm smart enough to know now that that Monday game has to be a 4-5 matchup because of how you guys have kind of figured out like the rest factor and the opponents knowing who they're playing. But
it works best when it's a 4-5.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to be.
Oh, okay. All right. Do you like the way it's going? And is there any changes this year?
I'm not aware of any changes for this year. 2 Saturday wild card, 3 Sunday wild card, 1 Monday wild card, the 2 Saturdays, the 2 Sundays on divisional weekend, and then obviously championship weekend. I'm not aware of any changes. We've talked to our partners about, that 3:00 and 6:30 window that we play in on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
We think about that for divisional Saturday as well. You get that Saturday night divisional game, starts at 8:00 at night, and you see it, even lately, maybe even like with some of the college basketball, they've been fortunate that the games were close, but that game gets out of hand after 11 o'clock Eastern time, people turn the television off. So we've talked a little bit about Saturday instead of 4:30 and 8. Should we be thinking about 3 and 6:30 like we do on Sunday? But I don't expect any major changes to the postseason this year. I think we're going to run it back. It's been working well. That Monday wild card hasn't proven to be a competitive inequity. The first team that did it was the Rams, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl. So again, I don't think anybody can say it's truly unfair. And it doesn't have to be a 4-5. There's some agreeable symmetry to it being a 4-5 because then, the other two teams who know they're playing each other, know they're playing, and they know they're playing Saturday or divisional. And then there's just one team waiting for the winner of the 4-5, either at home or on the road on Sunday of divisional. But, when we had to move your Pittsburgh game to Monday, what was that, a 2-7? That was a 2-7 game.
Right.
Yep.
We played that on Monday of Wild Card weekend, and the world kept spinning. I don't think it's a hard and fast rule. It's, arguably a little easier, a little less uncertainty, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if a 2-7 or a 3-6 found its way to Monday night of Wild Card at some point here.
Monday at 5:00 was the time for that game, which was just like the weirdest thing ever. Sal, you said
holiday, which helped, right? It was
for sure.
Yes,
and it did a pretty good viewership number to the point where our partners were like, "Hey, would you ever think of 530 on Monday Wild Card weekend?"
Yeah.
Never say never.
To the point where we're now talking about, hey, do we have to pack our bags and go overseas because Bills and Steelers did that well? Mike, last one for me. Is there a game or a couple of games that you are particularly excited about this season, whether that be the Bills or whether that be any team?
Yeah, look, I obviously Bills, Chiefs, no brainer. We talked about that. Bills, Eagles, of course. I think Eagles, Chiefs is going to be a good one. Like the Chiefs have a spectacular schedule. I mean, honestly, you can almost just read down the Chiefs schedule. They play Detroit. They play Washington. They play Baltimore again. Those are all going to be fun. That sounds like a difficult schedule. You get another Dallas Green Bay back in your hand again. Like anytime you play a Cowboys Packers game, throw out the record. Fans care. That'll be fun. And I think I'm probably, like I said before, I think I'm most intrigued this year by the NFC North, AFC North crossovers. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Cincy, playing Detroit, Mini, Green Bay, and obviously Chicago and Cleveland, not to overlook them. But, those are divisions that sent a lot of teams to the playoffs these last couple of years, and they all play each other this year. Like it feels like there's going to be one of those almost every week. So that's what I'm probably most excited about seeing, where are they going to fall? Are they going to pan out? It's rare when a division sends 3 teams to the playoffs, but, it's fun for us as we look ahead. Could the NFC North send 3 teams to the playoffs again? Heck, there was a minute there when you thought back to that Hail Mary game if Chicago had gotten the dub instead. Like, could a division actually one day send everybody? Like, it could be fun. We'll see.
1 hour and 27 minutes. Mike, we cannot thank you. You're so enough. You're so generous with your time.
I love it. I love doing it. I love that people care, and I love when people care. And we've got some history now, and to think about what these conversations used to be and what they're going to become. I hope one day we get to have a conversation about kickoff in Buffalo after they win the Super Bowl.
I want to say one thing, Mike, when you just said, you alluded to it about 45 minutes ago, that you guys were kind of projecting the Bills and what was going to happen. I think we in Buffalo, clear as day, think of that as the arrival. The Bills game against the Cowboys on Thanksgiving is when the Bills switched from, hey, always the bridesmaid, never the bride, to, whoa, they might be on to, like, legitimately that moment. Josh on that stage had a big game, and it just felt like something flipped. So I don't know what you guys are doing over there, but keep it up because it seems to be working.
We'll try, right? I think it kind of happened with Detroit a few years ago, right? When they went into Lambeau 272 and beat Aaron Rodgers to knock him out of the playoffs, and then came back on kickoff in Kansas City. Like, everybody's got their moment. Everybody's got their the game, like you said, that you can point to, and you can be like, hey, that's the one where we arrived. And we're here now, and man, we are not leaving. We are going to stay as long as they let us. And that's sort of the job here. Try to figure out who that next lightning in the bottle team is and make sure they're in a window where our fans can watch them.
We want everybody who consumed this podcast to give us some feedback. And if you have anything that we didn't touch on with Mike, we run into each other once in a while. I saw you in Baltimore last year during the Sunday night game. So, we can always give Mike a question or two, throw it his way. So we want everybody to be able to do that as well. At Sal Sports, at Matt_Bove, also at Sal Sports on the YouTube channel. Of course, wherever you pod on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. Mike North, the Vice President of Broadcast Planning for the National Football League. Mike, thank you once again for joining us.
Guys. Enjoy what's left of the quote unquote off season. All right.
You got it. And thanks to our producer, Mike Rabier, for sticking around, doing a great job today. Thanks a lot, everybody.